Now, Ukraine will hold emergency talks with NATO this coming week after Russia used an experimental mid-range ballistic missile to attack the central Ukrainian city of Dnipro.
Ukrainian officials say they're working with NATO to develop new air defence systems to counter the experimental hypersonic missile. But President Volodymyr Zelenskyy is calling on world leaders to do more to counter Russia's attacks. Joining us now is Oleksandra Keudel from the Kyiv School of Economics. Good morning to you, Oleksandra. What more do we know about this type of missile and why it signals such an escalation?
Good morning. So Russia fired what is called an experimental intermediate range ballistic missile on the Ukrainian city of Dnipro. Before hitting the target, it gained a speed of 10 times the speed of sound. And this missile is likely a modification of RS-26 Rubezh, which also gained the name of Kedr or Oreshnik, depends on what you refer to, whether a technology or a program that developed it. And it means that a missile like that can fly from Astrakhan in Russia, where it was fired, for example, to the UK in 20 minutes. So it didn't have any warheads attached to it this time, but it is capable of carrying up to 6 conventional or nuclear warheads. So usage of this particular weapon is a direct test of the West's commitment to real peace in Ukraine, actually, because it is a threat to the West less than to Ukraine, more than to Ukraine.
So what are the potential implications of that attack on Dnipro earlier this week on European missile defences more broadly?
So, of course, the Europeans have to think about ramping up their air defense, but it is to date, since this is not a serial production yet, and this particular missile is yet we don't expect it to be fired often. Rather, it is a test of the commitment of the Western leaders to withstand the Russian pressures. And the problem is that earlier, the incoming U.S. administration was signaling readiness to negotiate, or rather give up to the Russian threats and offer some kind of a peace deal over Ukraine. And I see here a connection that the more the West shows some weakness, the more Russia is trying to increase the stakes in order to grab more and more. And I think we have to understand this is a signal that Russia is not ready to stop in Ukraine, that it wants to change the international order, and rather that it operates as part of what I would call an axis of evil, together with China, Iran, North Korea, where authoritarian regimes are challenging the democratic countries' inability to defend what they stand for.
After Ukrainian forces fired British-made long-range Storm Shadow missiles at military targets inside Russia, the Russian President Vladimir Putin then said that he believes Russia has the, quote, right to attack military facilities in countries that supply Kyiv with long-range weapons. What can we read into that when it comes to Vladimir Putin's intent?
Of course, Vladimir Putin's intent is to reduce support for Ukraine, to install fear especially among the populations. But let us remember that Putin has been fighting NATO from the day one of the full-scale invasion in 2022, when the whole premise was that allegedly NATO was trying to arrange some kind of offense into Russia from Ukraine. So, of course, he's now using the international law to sort of play into his playbook, but it is not a change of strategy. It is a continuation of challenging the international order.
So what can we expect from Ukraine's talks with NATO in the coming week?
The NATO is, of course, in a very hard situation, because at a call like this, just not to change anything would mean like giving up to the threats. On the other hand, we know that Ukraine wants membership in the NATO, and some NATO members are not ready to it, including the United States. But I would expect some bold sounding initiatives like what you mentioned, with some kind of a joint technological development, hopefully some ramping up of For example, there has been a lot of talk on placing non-combatant troops to give more opportunity for the Ukrainian army to actually be on the front lines, or also placing instructors and hopefully more the air defense also against conventional weapons, because Ukraine is constantly being hit by the Russian missiles and drones.